My name is Laura, and when we moved to this new neighborhood, I thought it would be a fresh start for me and my husband. It was during a quiet afternoon that I first met Jason, the neighbor's son. He was in his late 20s, confident and charming. I was carrying groceries to the house when he walked over. "Need a hand with that?" he asked, his smile warm and inviting. "That would be great," I replied, trying to hide the blush that crept onto my face. He grabbed the bags effortlessly, his arms brushing against mine. "Nice to meet you, Laura," he said as we reached the door. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask." His eyes lingered on me for a moment before he turned to leave. That evening, as I unpacked the groceries, I couldn't help but think about his smile, his confidence. There was something about him that stayed with me. My husband, Mark, noticed my distracted mood. "Is everything okay?" he asked. "Just tired," I said, forcing a smile. The next day, Jason was in the garden when I stepped outside. "Morning, Laura," he called out, his tone friendly but with a hint of something more. "Good morning," I replied, trying to sound casual. He walked over, wiping his hands on a towel. "I was just fixing the sprinkler. Anything you need help with?" "No, everything's fine," I said quickly, but he didn't leave. "You know," he began, leaning slightly closer, "this neighborhood could use more people like you." His words caught me off guard. "People like me?" I asked, my voice wavering. "Kind, warm, someone who brightens up the place," he replied, his gaze intense. I felt a flutter in my chest, something I hadn't felt in years. "Thank you," I said, stepping back. But his smile stayed with me long after he walked away. That evening, Mark came home late, as usual. I tried to focus on dinner, but my mind kept drifting back to Jason's words. They felt so genuine. As the days passed, Jason found more reasons to talk to me. Just being neighborly, he'd say with a grin, but his presence was hard to ignore. It started small, helping with the garden, carrying groceries. But soon, our conversations became longer, more personal. One afternoon, he said, "You seem lonely, Laura. Is everything okay?" His question felt so direct, so unexpected, that I didn't know how to respond. "I'm fine," I said quickly, but he didn't look convinced. "If you ever need someone to talk to," he said, his voice soft, "I'm here." His words lingered with me for days. I tried to brush them off, but deep down, I knew there was a truth to what he said. I was lonely. That evening, as I sat in the living room, I glanced out the window. Jason was there, watering his garden, his shirt clinging to his chest from the heat. I quickly turned away, my cheeks flushing, but the image stayed with me. I didn't want to admit it, but Jason had started to occupy my thoughts more than I'd like. The next day, as I was cleaning the kitchen, there was a knock at the door. It was Jason holding a small box. "I baked these. Thought you might like some," he said with a grin. "That's so thoughtful," I said, taking the box. "Come in. I'll make us some tea." He hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside. As we sat in the kitchen, sipping tea, Jason started asking more personal questions. "Do you like it here? Does it feel like home yet?" "It's nice," I replied, avoiding his gaze, "but it's different. My husband works a lot, so it can feel a little quiet." Jason leaned forward, his expression serious. "Quiet can be good, but it can also be lonely." His words hung in the air, and I didn't know how to respond. Before I could say anything, he changed the subject. "If you ever need company," he said casually, "I'm usually around. Just let me know." After he left, I couldn't stop thinking about him. His presence was comforting, but it also stirred something in me that I hadn't felt in a long time. A few days later, I was struggling with a broken garden hose when Jason appeared again. "Looks like you need a hand," he said, walking over with a confident smile. "How do you always show up at the right time?" I asked, laughing nervously. "Maybe it's fate," he said, his tone teasing but his eyes serious. As he fixed the hose, we talked about his plans. "I'm thinking of going back to school," he said, "but I'm not sure what I want to do yet." "You're still young," I said, smiling. "You have plenty of time to figure it out." He looked up at me, his gaze intense. "And you? Are you happy with where you are?" His question caught me off guard. I think so," I said, but the uncertainty in my voice was clear. Jason didn't push, but his expression said he understood. As he stood up, his hand brushed against mine for just a moment. It was such a small gesture, but it sent a jolt through me. "If you ever need to talk," he said softly, "I'm here." That night, I lay in bed next to Mark, staring at the ceiling. Jason's words, his touch, his presence, they were all I could think about. The next morning, Mark left early for work, as usual. I found myself looking out the window, hoping to catch a glimpse of Jason, and when I did, my heart skipped a beat. He waved, and before I knew it, I was walking outside. "Morning," he said, his smile warm. I was just about to grab some coffee. "Want to join me?" I hesitated, but the idea of spending time with him felt impossible to resist. "Sure," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We walked to the local cafe, talking about everything and nothing. But the way he listened, the way he looked at me, made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. As we sat at a corner table, Jason leaned forward. "Laura, can I be honest with you?" he asked, his voice low. "You're incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." I froze, my heart racing. "Jason, we can't," I began, but he shook his head. "I know," he said, "but I had to say it. I had to let you know how I feel." After the cafe, things between us changed. Jason's confession lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable, and I couldn't ignore the way it made me feel. The next evening, as I was reading in the living room, there was a knock at the door. It was Jason. "I just wanted to drop this off," he said, holding a small potted plant. "For your garden," he added, smiling. I let him in, telling myself it was harmless, but the air between us was thick with unspoken tension. "Your husband's not home?" he asked, his tone casual but curious. "He's working late," I replied, trying to sound nonchalant, but my voice betrayed me. We sat in the kitchen, the potted plant between us. Jason leaned back in his chair, his eyes fixed on mine. "You seem different tonight," he said. "Distracted." I laughed nervously. "It's been a long day," I said, avoiding his gaze, but Jason wasn't one to let things go. "You don't have to pretend around me, Laura," he said softly. His words hit me harder than I expected. Before I could stop myself, I said, "It's just complicated." He nodded, his expression understanding. "I get that," he said. As the conversation continued, I felt myself letting my guard down. Jason listened intently, his gaze never wavering. And when our hands brushed as he passed me a glass, I didn't pull away. The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Jason stood up, taking a step closer to me. "Lavra," he said, his voice low, "can I ask you something?" I nodded, my heart pounding. "Do you ever think about what if?" His question hung in the air, and I didn't know how to respond. "I can't," I whispered, shaking my head. But Jason stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. "Why not?" "No one has to know," he said, his tone almost pleading. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words didn't come. And when he leaned in, his lips barely brushing against mine, I didn't stop him. The kiss was brief but intense, leaving me breathless. "I shouldn't have done that," I stammered, stepping back. But Jason didn't move. "He didn't stop me," he said quietly. That night, I lay awake in bed, replaying the moment over and over. Guilt and desire swirled in my mind, making it impossible to sleep. The next morning, Jason was in the garden again. He waved, and despite everything, I found myself walking outside. "Morning," he said, his smile easy and warm. "About last night," I began, but Jason shook his head. "You don't have to explain," he said. "I know what you're thinking, and I won't push." His words were reassuring, but they didn't make the situation any less complicated. The pull between us was still there, stronger than ever. That evening, Mark was unusually attentive, asking about my day and offering to help with dinner. I felt a pang of guilt as I watched him, but I couldn't bring myself to confess. Jason, on the other hand, seemed unfazed. He continued to stop by, finding reasons to linger, and each time it became harder to resist him. One afternoon as the sun set, Jason and I found ourselves alone again. "You deserve more, Lavra," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "More than just this." That evening, as the house grew quiet, Jason knocked at the door again. My heart raced as I opened it. "We need to talk," he said, his tone serious. "Jason, this has to stop," I said, but my voice wavered. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Does it? Because I don't think you want it to." His words cut through my defenses. "You don't understand," I whispered. "This isn't just about me. I have a husband, a life, and are you happy in that life?" he asked, his gaze intense. "Does he make you feel the way I do?" The question lingered, and I couldn't bring myself to answer. Jason stepped closer, his hands gently cupping my face. "Tell me to leave," he said softly. "If you really want this to end, tell me and I'll walk away." I opened my mouth, but the words didn't come. Instead, I closed the distance between us, our lips meeting in a kiss that felt both wrong and inevitable. That night, we crossed a line I knew we couldn't come back from. The guilt was immediate, but so was the sense of connection. It was a moment I'd never forget. The next morning, I avoided Jason, but it was impossible to ignore him. He sent a text, "We need to talk." I deleted it without replying, but my heart ached. Mark, oblivious as ever, left early for work. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, debating whether to confront Jason or cut ties completely. When Jason showed up later that day, I told him it was over. "We can't keep doing this," I said, my voice trembling. "It's not fair to anyone." Jason nodded, his jaw tight. "I get it," he said, but his eyes told a different story. I want you to know I don't regret any of it." His words stayed with me long after he left. I knew he meant them, and part of me didn't regret it either. But I also knew it couldn't continue. A week later, Mark announced that we'd be moving for his job. Relief washed over me, knowing that a fresh start was exactly what I needed. Jason and I didn't say goodbye. As the moving truck pulled away, I caught a glimpse of him standing at his window, watching us leave. Our eyes met for a fleeting moment. Now, as I sit in our new home, I often think about those days. The choices I made, the lines I crossed. A part of me will always wonder what could have been. But I've learned that moments of temptation are fleeting, while the damage they leave behind can last forever. I carry that lesson with me every day. To anyone listening, don't let a moment of weakness define your life. Be stronger than I was, because trust and loyalty are too precious to lose. This is my story, a story of mistakes, lessons, and moving forward. I can't change the past, but I can make sure I never repeat it.